Hey guys, LootWizard here with another video on Gems of War, and in this video I'm going to be going over the different ways that you can counter this weapon called Life and Death. This weapon here, which is used all the time in PvP now for defense teams, and it can be really annoying because not only does it steal life, but it death marks those enemies, and death mark has a 10% chance to kill those troops each turn until it gets cleansed. So it can just completely destroy your team. And the fact that this weapon is stealing life, which means it's going to be harder to kill, and it will enchant itself, and it has a relatively low mana cost of 15. So it's going to, with that enchant, and then if they have a banner that boosts brown or purple, this weapon gets full pretty fast. And then it will cast again, and it'll steal more life, and it's stealing, for me, about 27, so if I cast it, it's stealing close to 60 life every time I cast it. So this thing is hard to kill, and usually when you see this weapon in defense teams, the Orb Weaver class is what most people use. I'm still working on leveling mine up to 100, but I have most of the traits unlocked, or talents rather. And one of the ones that's really annoying is Stealthy. So what that means is that troop cannot be targeted by spells unless there are no other targets. Now, what this means is single spells. This weapon can still be targeted by spells, like damage to all enemies, and also weapons that will damage like the first two enemies, or the two last enemies, or random enemies. So it can still be damaged by spells, just not single targeted spells. So that's very important to understand when we go in to build a team in order to counter this weapon. Another thing that's really annoying about this is if you have the traits unlocked on the Orb Weaver class, it's immune to mana burn, mana drain, and mana steal. So you can't mana drain it, you can't mana steal from it. And it has a 35% chance to summon a Great Spider when it takes damage. So this is a really annoying weapon and class combination, and I'm sure most all of you have encountered this team in PvP already, and it is really quite annoying to fight against. So we're going to be going over ways that we can counter it and destroy it in PvP. And it'll also probably help in Guild Wars too. But I'm not going to be going over in this video teams with all the same color for Guild Wars. These are just ways in which you can counter this weapon. And I've already covered a little bit of that with the damage spells, but we're going to get into this in more depth. So what I've done, instead of trying to chase down this team constantly in PvP, which, I mean, it shows up a lot, but I don't want to cycle through a bunch of battles until I find it. So I set up this as a defense team. Normally I don't use it as a defense team because honestly I don't want to irritate people so much from playing PvP that they just give up on the game entirely. I do want people to still enjoy playing Gems of War, and I don't want to, you know, have this in my defense team all the time. But for the sake of this video, I put it in my defense team so I can test the team out in my defense, and this way we can test out teams in order to find out which ones and which combinations of troops would be really effective against this weapon. So most of the time you will see other troops here, the King Avlorn and the Arachnean Weaver mythic troop, and then you'll usually see Grave Seer or this troop, which is a newer one of these troops that starts with full mana, but it converts a certain color into purple. And since the Life and Death weapon takes purple and the Weaver takes purple, that's a really great combination to get that started up like right away. So this is usually the combination that you'll see. And I know I've mentioned in previous videos that silence is also a way that in which you can counter this weapon. And that is true to some extent, but only before the weapon casts itself. So once the weapon casts itself for the first time, it's going to bless itself. And once it's blessed, you will not be able to silence it. And you can't devour it when it's blessed. And you can't transform it when it's blessed. So how do we defeat this thing, right? Because not only does it steal life, it's death marking, it enchants itself after it's cast, and it blesses itself. So it's really an annoying weapon. So the main type of damage that you want to do to this thing is either skull damage or a damage all spell. And what I've found is the best way to do it is damage all spells and looping teams. So you want to have a team where it creates mana and does damage to all enemies at the same time. That way it's going to constantly, your troops are going to constantly fill up with mana and give you those extra turns that you need to continue to cast your damage all spells. And it'll take, maybe up to a dozen turns of doing that over and over and over until you kill the life and death weapon, because it's going to have a lot of life. But that is one of the most effective ways that I've found to counter this weapon and this type of team. Skull damage does work, but it's a little more tricky. You can't loop that as well. There are a couple of troops like the Wild Queen, which will steal magic, or steal attack rather, and give it to the first enemy. But this team with the Orbweaver class does have root traps, so you will find out that your first troop will get entangled from the start of the battle a lot of times with this team. So skulls do work, but they're not the best. That's what I've found. So let's go test a team here, and this is one looping team that I set up, and I've tested it out a couple of times. It will not win every single time, but it wins the majority of the times that I've used it against this team. And we have two King Gobtruffles here, which these troops are my main looping troops. They're going to do damage to all enemies. This means this is going to bypass the Stealthy Trait on that weapon. It's going to, it's not going to do a lot of damage. It's going to do that 24, but the point is here is that we're going to create enough gems. Hopefully, it says 16 green and brown gems boosted by poison and diseased enemies, and then it'll gain an extra turn. So the point is we want to get enough mana going here where we can just keep casting and not give them any kind of turns. So two of these King Gobtruffles is great down here at the bottom. And Forest Troll up here at the top is great because it will double the amount of green gems on the board, and there will be an occasion where you don't have the King Gobtruffles full yet, and so the Forest Troll will fill them back up. Now, the weapon I'm using here is Titania's Fan, which this thing is, its main purpose is to cleanse all allies, because you got to remember here, this weapon, it probably will get cast at least once or twice, and when it does, it's going to put that death mark on my two King Gobtruffles. Now, I could put these up higher in this at the bottom, and that'll save one of my Gobtruffles, and we could run it that way. But one of the Gobtruffles is still going to get hit by that death mark. So we want some kind of weapon to cleanse all allies. I'm using this one because it's green, and it will get full just simply by the Truffles and the Forest Troll. But there is another, I will say that there is another weapon here, and this is a class weapon that you can get. It will, the Staff of St. Ostra here, it will cleanse all allies and give them life. So this weapon here, and I believe if you do upgrade it, it does have silence. Yeah, it does here at level 9. It will silence the first enemy. But also, if we go back here and you look at King Avlorn, if they do have King Avlorn up at the top, and a lot of these teams do put King Avlorn at the top because it is immune to silence and entangle. So you do have to be careful about that as well. So silence may not be the best way to defeat this type of elf life and death team setup. So I'm going to leave the hero class there, and our King Gobtruffles are going to get hit probably by this, and we're just going to have to hope that we can cleanse them before they die. And We want the Force Troll at the top because that's going to be our fallback for mana generation. We want to get that up first. Now, there is one other thing you can do here, which is you could, for class, you could go to Frost Mage, and you could use Frost Mage instead of Titan, which I'm using because of the freeze. It will 25% chance to freeze a random enemy when an ally casts a spell, and since you're going to be looping, within a couple of casts, you'll probably freeze the entire enemy team, which if they do get a turn, they won't be able to gain any extra turns as long as they're frozen. And that is a good way to counter what's going on there. But that will only come into effect if they have a turn. Now remember, we want to loop as much as possible, which means we're going to be gaining so many extra turns that they won't have a chance to do a turn. So this is why I've gone with Titan, because once we get everything looping and powered up, freeze isn't really going to matter because I'm going to have so many extra turns as long as they don't freeze my team. So that's why I've gone with Titan. The second reason I've gone with Titan is because of Force Troll is a giant, and that will start with 50% mana, so it'll cut this 12 down to 6, and that will allow me to get that up really quickly so that I can hopefully get enough green gems flowing down to the Gobtruffles. And for banner, I'm using double green brown. The brown is for the Force Troll, and green is for everything else. So this is my life and death counter team. So let's do a couple of test battles here. And with my luck, I might actually lose the first one, but we'll see. I'm going to do a couple of battles here just so you guys can see what goes on with this type of team. But see here, this is what happened. He had Root Trap, so if I was using a Skull team against this kind of life and death team setup, it is going to be really difficult because you would have to cleanse this first, which now I could cast this and cleanse that, but I do want to get this up so that I can get the King Gobtruffles going. And of course, he's going to do that. And the other thing that I didn't mention earlier is that this weapon does drain some mana from the first enemy troop. So as you can see, I had my Force Troll completely up, and it drained a few mana from that. So now I'm in a worse situation, and I'm about to get webbed as well because of the Weaver. So this is really bad here. I could cleanse right now, but I don't want to because he's gonna web me. So we're gonna go ahead and get our mana there. So as you can see here, he's blessed himself. That's what this little shining ray of light is over here. And the nice thing about the trolls is that being webbed has no effect on doubling the amount of green gems. So what I'm going to do is double my green gems, get the Gobtruffles up, powered up, and now we're going to cleanse everything with our weapon here. And now we should be able to loop. We lost some life on our Gobtruffles, but if we can successfully loop from here on out, then we're going to win the battle. So let's see how this happens here. And we're going to have to rely a lot on our Forest Troll here to get enough of that green. The other thing that I do have on the Titan class is Lightning Strike, which is really great because that will, every time I do a 4 match, it'll explode 1 gem. As you can see here, it'll explode a gem. And I didn't even need to use Forest Troll this time around in order to get these 2 up because of that Lightning Strike. And we got a little bit of skull damage there now that this is cleansed up at the top. And as you can see, of course, he's got the 35% chance here. He summoned that spider. So we're going to get every 4 match that we can see, just so that we might get a skull match. But we're not going to take any direct skull matches unless they're 4 matches. But as you can see here, the life on the life and death weapon is going down through the process of the damage all, even though it has stealthy. So if you go through here, it says stealthy, and so damage all is excellent for killing any troops or weapons with stealthy. So we're just going to continue looping. We just got rid of that Arachnian Weaver troop. and the only thing that's left here is the weapon, and it keeps spawning more spiders, so that's going to extend the time of this battle. But as you can see, the weapon is now dead, so now we could probably connect a few skulls if we wanted to, like that, just to kill these spiders a little quicker. But if they do fill up their mana, they're going to spawn more spiders. So let's just keep looping here. Connect this skull, and there you go. This team won. So we did take a hit early on, but we were successful in cleansing everything with that weapon, and we were able to continue to just loop right onward. So let me go back to my defense, and let's go do one more battle here just to see if we can do it a second time. A lot of it depends on your beginning gems as well. Like if you have a 4 match of brown or blue right away from the start, this sort of team is gonna be a lot quicker. And we're in a similar situation here where this is probably going to get cast first. Maybe. There is 10 green gems. That's another factor in whether this team wins or not, is if you have enough green gems with the forest troll. Looks like we might actually get ahead of the game on this one without it actually casting. I'll just keep looping all of this over and over here. And yeah, this one went by a lot quicker actually than the last one. And we'll cast the forest troll, get both of these up again. So there you go. As you can see, that is one of the best ways that I've found to counter that life and death weapon. And yeah, forest troll and this weapon I recommend over the other one that's yellow, simply because yellow isn't really a color that we're going to be creating. It fills up because of the green. So this weapon here, I believe you do get this weapon through just your masteries, through your green and your purple gem masteries as you're leveling up. So you should probably have this weapon at some point. I don't remember what the masteries are, but this is a great weapon for this type of team. And I'll put the team code for this team down in the description on this video below. So if you do have all these troops, you can copy and paste that and use this team every time the life and death team here shows up in PvP. So hopefully this was wasn't too boring of a video for you guys, but that's basically my ideas and how I've been able to fight these life and death teams in PvP. And yeah, so I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.